Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Ruby Rogues podcast. This week on our panel, we have Dave Kimura.
Hey, everyone.
I'm Charles Max Wood from devchat.tv. Just a reminder, go check out the DevRev, thedevrev.com. We have a special guest this week, and that's Nathan. Oh, boy. How do you say your last name, Nathan?
Ruehs.
Ruehs. I never would have gotten there.
Yeah, no one does.
Where's the C?
This episode is sponsored by Sentry.io. Recently, I came across a great tool for tracking and monitoring problems in my apps. Then I asked them if they wanted to sponsor the show and allow me to share my experience with you. Sentry provides a terrific interface for keeping track of what's going on with my app. It also tracks releases so I can tell if what I deployed makes things better or worse. They give you full stack traces and as much information as possible about the situation when the error occurred to help you track down the errors. Plus, one thing I love, you can customize the context provided by Sentry. So, if you're looking for specific information about the request, you can provide it. It automatically scrubs passwords and secure information, and you can customize the scrubbing as well. Finally, it has a user feedback system built in that you can use to get information from your users. Oh, and I also love that they support open source to the point where they actually open sourced Sentry if you want to self-host it. Use the code devchat at Sentry.io to get 2 months free on Sentry's small plan. That's code devchat at Sentry.io. Do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Sure. Nathan Ruehs, I'm a programmer in the Milwaukee area. Work for a big corporation that got hired right after college, and now I am trying to kind of sneak Ruby in whatever I can, and just exploring different ways I can do that.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's what you emailed me about, and I was like, that sounds really interesting just to talk about Ruby in like large enterprise type places, and yeah, how to sneak it in, how to affect, I guess, some change in the way that they view those different options. So do you want to talk a little bit really quickly about sort of the situation you're in? I mean, I remember when I worked at a university. That was my job in college. I worked for the university I was attending. And everything was Java, and they all had kind of a set stack that they used, and it was really hard to deviate from that in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I'd say even more so you'll have in bigger corporations that the technology stack is very controlled, especially for their production apps that are facing their clients. So trying to get changes in that is very difficult. But where I've had success is kind of automating certain things, making little side projects to just a lot of manual tasks that either our customer support team was doing or our operations team was doing, making those automated so that just to clean up like a lot of manual error or just saving time. So trying to sneak it in that way has been where I've had the most success, where it's not official production code, but still can be very useful. And I found out that most of your managers, they really don't care like what language you're using as long as it's productive. So you can show some success of like saving time. They're going to be a lot more point to just accept it and, not really question where it's written, especially if it's not official production code that has to go through all the layers of review. And so.
Yeah, it's always fun sneaking in a new technology stack into a company. When I was first hired on to my current employer, we were a heavy .NET shop, and I kind of silently introduced Ruby into some proof of concepts that I was playing with of some potential money generators. And then, that quickly led to, becoming products within the company. And, it just kind of grew from there. So it's still mainly a .NET shop, but then I introduced a large aspect of Ruby into there. And then once we were acquired by Sage, Sage is much more of a Ruby on Rails shop. So, I kind of fit nicely into that ecosystem. And, they still had some .NET and Java stuff going on, but, it was, kind of worked out well for me in the long run. But it's always fun and challenging to get the buy-in. And I couldn't even imagine being in a, banking or financial environment like that to try to introduce something new. Because any banks that I've ever worked with, technology-wise, are so finicky about, we're only going to have Internet Explorer 5.5 installed on our computers because that's the only thing secure. We're not going to allow anything else. But Chrome is pretty safe. But no.
Yeah. You definitely get a lot of pushback when you try to, especially anything in official production. It's really hard to like I tried getting Ruby installed in our server, and it's like a mountain of paperwork just to do some DevOps automation. And it was like getting like the fifth degree of why you need this, and so it can be challenging for sure.
Yeah, well, and it seems like any sufficiently large system. I mean, when I worked at the university, what was that? Like 2001 to 2006, and so everything was still mainframe based. And to a certain degree, I still have friends over there. I think some of that stuff's still running because it's just hard to replace. And so, you've got all these systems out there. I mean, I can imagine Walmart seems to be fairly progressive as far as their technology goes. You have Walmart Labs and they're doing interesting stuff with JavaScript and things. But I would not be shocked if they have some systems that they just don't quite know how to replace because it does so many things and they're so complicated that you can replace it kind of piecemeal, but even then, the integrations are hairy messes, and it's just, yeah. I mean, I can see why some of this stuff gets some resistance, but at the same time, I mean, I'm not out there, and most of the people I know coming into the field aren't out there looking for a sexy job writing, Java or C++ or, even older languages like Fortran or COBOL, and a lot of these mainframes, that's what they're running.
We're a mainframe shop, and it's pretty painful, like making any kind of changes. There's no automated tests. There's no concern to refactoring to make your code look better because everything's so brittle that you try to change as little as possible. So anytime that you have to go in there to make a bug fix, it's quite painful. And it seems like that mentality was kind of taken forward through even when we moved to Java. That a lot of the programmers, they thought, oh, we can just train them on Java. And, they don't have any automated tests, even in our new Java system. And even the code is still the methods are 200 lines long. And so it's kind of frustrating. But our companies certainly have an initiative to move off the mainframe. So they see that, all this legacy code is causing them a lot of pain. So they're trying to move there. It's just not going very smoothly or as fast. It's a big project, but sometimes it's hard for old dogs to learn new tricks, it seems like.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is an interesting problem to solve. I don't know that you're necessarily solving it with Ruby over there, but I mean, how much work is it to, I mean, how long do they think it's going to take to replace the mainframe?
Well, we've been working on a project. We bought another company that does something similar to what we're doing, and we're trying to modify it for us. And we've been working on it for 3 years, and it seems like we've gotten nowhere. It's still very waterfall type of architecture. So they're been doing all this planning and haven't written a whole lot of working code yet. And they've just decided in the last couple of weeks that they're going to completely switch their philosophy. And, in 6 months, now is the new thing. In 6 months, we're going to have a product out that's going to do it. So it's not quite clear on when, things are going to be switched. But I think they have a goal to have everything done. And by 2025, everything's supposed to be off the mainframe.
I can't even imagine a project that takes, 7, 8, 9, 10 years.
Yeah.
Oh,
but that's where you're at. So that's what you got to do.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny how even when a better technology stack or a better methodology, getting away from waterfall design over to a agile scrum or something similar methodology, it's a lot more efficient. You get less bugs introduced because you're constantly pushing out new revisions and all that good stuff. It's funny how companies will get scared or they don't get the progress or results that they want, and then they just fall back into their old way of doing things, where for the past 30, 40 years, they've seen the progress that they've made with those methodologies, and they just won't switch over to something new because you still have some higher ups up there that are senior, and they say, let's just do it the way we've always done it, and just how hindering to innovation that is, i.e. why they're still on Internet Explorer.
Yeah, but the flip side is that a lot of these companies employ people that will tell them, look, if you don't upgrade this, eventually you're going to have a security issue or, some other thing come up, and then we're going to have a major lawsuit on our hands or have a regulatory body come in and shut us down because we're not doing things properly. So at some point, the trade-offs get to the point where it's just not worth it. Nathan also sent us an article where it was talking about how a lot of these companies have trouble hiring people to do those jobs in the first place. So, I mean, is it going to become cost prohibitive to hire somebody to go work on your COBOL code? Because I think if you offer enough money, people will go make that career transition. But how much more expensive is it going to get before it's worth it?
Yeah, I'd say we're definitely in the outsource model. So that's, I think, where they've been trying to mitigate that is having a lot of the programming being done in India just to do those cost savings. But I think they're still seeing just the tremendous cost of making changes and the testing and just the regression bugs that they bring in, that the maintenance is too much. So I think that's why they're pushing to get off the mainframe so that they can use a more modern platform. I think it's just when you have a large company, just making any kind of change is just extremely hard.
Mm-hmm. So where have you been sneaking Ruby in? Where does Ruby play into this?
I started out pretty small, just trying to. I learned Ruby in college. I played a little bit around with Ruby on Rails, and then when I got to my current job, I was looking just to automate a few things. I think it started out with just FTPing files to and from the mainframe, just trying to make a little command line application so it'd be a little bit easier when I have to write out the full name line and worry about connecting. And I looked at doing it in my different options, and I looked at doing it in BAT, and that was just painful to do. So I knew a little bit about Ruby, so I started playing around with it, and I was just impressed with the simplicity and the elegancy of the language. So I started writing just some short command line applications to just move files around. And then I think the next thing was doing some report scraping. So if we had like a production issue where we had to gather data from some reports, I would write a little Ruby script that would just pull off some key values and shove them into a CSV file so we could kind of tabulate them and kind of see where it was. And as that grew, I became the go-to guy to do certain things. And so then expanded into, we had a mainframe screen where for customer setups, we had to do a lot of hand entering when like a new bank would come on. We'd have to do like anywhere between like 500 and 2,000 different customer setups. And the way they would handle it in the past, they would just have, customer support team. They would have like 3 or 4 of them just work through the weekend and just type them in all by hand.
Oh, man.
Just to get them, make sure that they were ready to go on Monday morning when they started processing files. So I started playing with it. They had a little like Visual Basic script that you could kind of do some of the automation, but I was looking a way to connect that with Excel, and it was just painful trying to make that connections. So I investigated if there a way I could do this with Ruby, and I discovered the WinOLE library that allows you to kind of, if a Windows application has like a public API, allows you to connect them together. So I was able to connect the mainframe emulator to the Office Excel spreadsheet, and they would just enter all the customer setups in the Excel spreadsheet, and it would just manipulate the mainframe emulator, entering like the keystrokes to enter them all in. So you could run like 2,000 setups in 30 minutes, and you wouldn't have to do anything. You just kind of let it run in the background and then just double check that everything worked there. So that was kind of like my foot in the door, really making those automation kind of spreadsheets that would link the mainframe to Excel. So once I got that going, then I kept on expanding on making more complicated automation tools, and that's where I've seen the most successes, where I've actually gotten like requests from other people, other team members. Hey, can you find a way to automate this? So kind of build that up and build some libraries, some small abstractions of to make it easier to build new automation tools.
Yeah, whenever I'm looking to automate something, I figure or I ask myself, is this really a good thing to automate? So I say, what happens if I have to do this 100 times today or 1,000 times? And is that going to take me much longer to do? Or is it as simple as just doing it 1 or 2 times? And if it's a really simple thing that it's not going to scale based the amount of time is not going to scale based on the number of iterations I have to do, then it's not really something worth automating immediately, so to speak. But if it's going to start saving hours and hours, and it's something that's going to be repeatable, so something that's going to occur more than once, it's not just a one-time thing, then automation is a awesome place. And, since this is a Ruby podcast, I love Ruby. Ruby's usually the first language that I hop to automate such a thing. So it sounds like that was a really good time saver for, your team there.
Yeah, for sure. It's they use it pretty much on a weekly basis to add customer setups and stuff like that. So that's kind of very rewarding to see it being used and saving other people's time. And that's it's fun to kind of work. You can just walk down the aisle and kind of talk to your customer to see how is your program meeting their needs, and where you can adjust to make it easier to save them even more time.
Yeah, I'm the same way. And in fact, I've kind of taken things from automating this or that to actually writing a fully blown Rails app to automate stuff for the podcasts. And so I can see a lot of the business process stuff on the back end, or even setting up and running and automating things to prep for any kind of automated testing or DevOps or things like that. I mean, yeah, it's kind of an obvious tool to reach to for that, because it has so many things that are just kind of automatic and built in that you can go to for those things.
So do you find yourself doing a lot of Ruby development outside of the work to automate some things at home, or just side projects? So your initial start with Ruby, how has that led you in other areas?
For sure. I've done a few things to record our Bible study lecture. So just kind of automating a few of the recording and rendering and uploading process of distributing that. I've used a little bit of Ruby for that. Then I've used a little bit of Zapier too to automate that. So I really like kind of Ruby as a kind of like a little duct tape language that kind of hold different things together. I would really like to start a Rails project to kind of bone up that skill, but it's hard to kind of dedicate the time. It's fun to write down get a script, spend 2 or 3 hours on a script and see the immediate results. With Rails, it's a lot better than other frameworks, but still it's going to be a couple of days or weeks before you get that same kind of feedback of something working and useful. Taking that next step is something I really want to focus on next.
Yeah, it's cool that you're incorporating it in other areas of your life. My wife's always like, you can't solve everything with code, David.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's awesome having supportive spouses that will encourage your coding sometimes.
I feel like I have a superpower.
For sure. It's kind of crazy even at work. Like I'm working with all these other developers, and like they'll have a problem where it's will take them a long time to figure out they're doing this manual process, and I'm thinking you're a programmer, don't you want to use some code to like finish speed this up? And it's like if it's not on the main production code, like it's like they like lose all ability to code for anything else. So I found like I can write some little apps not only for like our support team, but also for other developers that they're either too busy or they just don't think it's worth their time to try to spend the time invest a little bit of time up front to automate something that they're doing.
This episode is brought to you by TripleByte. Applying to programming jobs sucks. You have to put the right keywords in your resume. You spend hours and hours on the phone screens and take-home projects, and that's assuming the company even responds to your application. Well, if you're a software engineer, TripleByte can help. They work with over 400 top tech companies, from big names like Dropbox and Adobe to exciting startups. You do one brief online interview with them, and if you do well, you go straight to final interviews with the company on their platform. It's like the Common App for software developers. TripleByte does not look at your resume or where you went to school. All they care about is if you can code. I've helped dozens of software developers with various credentials get jobs, and this looks like a terrific way for you to get in and get interviewed and get a job without a lot of the hassle and overhead. You can go check them out at triplebyte.com/rogues. That's triplebyte.com, byte as in 8 bits. As a special offer for listeners of this show, if you take a job through TripleByte, they'll offer you a $1,000 signing bonus. So besides automation, DevOps kinds of things, I mean, are there other places where you're sneaking it in?
Those are the main places. I had dreams of building a Ruby and Rails app that would like be like a dashboard for our customers and kind of be able to push some customer setups. The problem I've run into is being able to get Ruby having Rails installed on a server, and they're really cautious about what goes on there. Everything's behind a firewall, so you can't just do a gem install Rails. All that's blocked off, segregated from the internet. So get anything installed on that. So mostly it's been automation scripts and stuff like that along those lines.
Yeah, it's interesting. I worked my last full-time job, which was still almost 8.5 years ago. It was all segregated stuff because we were dealing with government data. We were a small company. We were using Ruby on Rails. But yeah, when we deployed stuff, we would tell the IT guys what version of what gem we wanted. They'd go download the tarball off of rubygems.org, and then they'd package it up as an RPM package, and then they would deploy it using whatever version of Linux we had running on the servers, using essentially their packaging system. And so it was just,
crazy.
And so, there was no gem install.
I can't even use gem install on my local machine because we've got so many proxy servers and stuff like that. So I have to download each gem manually and install it locally. And if it has any C extensions, you have to get permissions to, install anything with a C extension. So you have to fill out a form and give an explanation why you need that. So like, if you just want to try out a gem, it's like, maybe I'll just write the code myself, because it's such a hassle to install, different gems depending on what you want to do.
Wow.
That seems very hindering to productivity, but I understand why they do that kind of stuff, because all it takes is one mistake or one wrong gem, and you compromise security at the company, and that could end up meaning a lot of end users affected.
Yep.
I mean, look at Home Depot, Verizon, Equifax, all these places. I'm sure they're having second thoughts of how they do their stuff around there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, unfortunately, and I'm not speaking for Nathan's employer, I don't even know who they are, but at some of these companies, they're more concerned about the PR fallout, though, than that there was actually a data breach.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of times it seems like it's security theater where they're,
That is a great term.
Just pretending to, they're checking off things on a box, and then the actual security, stuff that can improve, is just kind of ignored. So it's just, a box that they have to check. And whereas they don't consider the cost of, certain security measures that probably don't add a whole lot of value.
Yeah. So one thing I'm wondering, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, and you can tell me, what, I'm not going to answer that, and we'll just edit this out. But a lot of folks, when they find themselves in your position, right? I'm working for a company where, a big Java or .NET shop, large enterprise, it's hard to change. I'm kind of sneaking it in where I can. Eventually they get to the point where it's like, you know what? I just love Ruby so much. I want to go work somewhere where they use Ruby all the time, and they wind up switching jobs. And so I'm wondering, I guess the question is how long do you keep slipping this in under the hood until eventually you go, you know what? I'd be happier somewhere else.
For sure. And I think that's kind of where I'm at. Either I want the freedom to, do this full time, or, a majority of my time, or, try to find a job elsewhere. And I think what I've gotten is that, this is great. You can do it on your own time, but you still got to do your other duties. So it's never going to be a majority of your time. The challenge I've been finding is getting a job elsewhere is that I don't have a production Ruby app. So interviewing with other jobs, it's challenging to find a place that's willing to take a chance on someone hasn't been in a Ruby on Rails shop that has 3 years on a production ready app. And that's I think another downfall is that at my job, I don't have a senior Ruby programmer that can kind of come aside and teach me, you could do this better this way. So it's a lot of just figuring it out on my own and hoping that it works. But I'd like that mentorship to kind of, beef up my skills and to, learn how to be a better programmer. And if you're in a shop that's still largely .NET or Ruby based or Java based, I don't think it's going to be really challenging to kind of get those skills.
And luckily today, there are so many resources out there to help you learn new things. I remember when I first started Ruby, there wasn't, other than a few books, there wasn't really much out there to really get you into web development. But the world's changed so much, and now the number of resources out there are so abundant, even depending on whatever kind of learning style you have. So I'd say just, keep at it, keep learning Ruby in your own time, keep, using it to make your life better. And one day it'll be your job.
Yeah. Well, and this is the kind of stuff that I've been harping on DevRev. And so I may put my DevRev hat on for a minute, but a lot of times, and I don't know if you've actually been out there, looking at Ruby jobs or not, but a lot of times we convince ourselves that it won't work. And so, you're sitting there thinking, you know what, I don't have a lot of production Ruby experience, and so who would hire me? And it turns out there are a lot of companies that just want somebody with a good level of experience that has, at least a passable knowledge of Ruby, which it sounds like you have, that, they can bring in and teach you how they do things. And they'd take you over somebody that has a lot of Ruby experience that they're just not convinced is going to work well with them. And so if you haven't looked, I would encourage you to actually go look if that's the direction you want to go. Or if you want to continue to, try and make the change where you're at. I mean, that makes sense too. Just keep in mind that, ultimately one way or the other, hopefully you're working toward wherever you want to wind up at.
And I would also say, look at the positives of where you're currently at. Sometimes I wish I could limit, what gems that get added into a project. Because I think for a long time, people have been so quick to say, oh, there's a gem for that. Well, it's not been maintained in, 3 years, but you know what? That's okay because it's not that big. And they just add it in. And then next thing you know, that gem is a breaking change when you go to upgrade your Rails application. And now you have to try to extract this gem that you've heavily embedded into your application out just so you can upgrade to Rails, newer version of Rails. So, there are some positives there. It kind of makes you have to research and see what's in the core Ruby library that, so much is in there already that, you can just do yourself.
Dave, you're the only one dealing with those kinds of breaking changes, I promise. I need to practice my evil laugh after I say stuff like that. But
yeah, there's some definite benefits to having a large corporation. Usually, you can stay in your job like most people. Mm-hmm. In my group, they've been there I'm the young guy and been there 10 years, and most people have been there 15, 20 years. So if you like having a stable job, I'm not the typical developer that seems like you're jumping jobs every 2 years to the next hot startup. That part doesn't appeal to me, but working with Ruby really does. So I definitely see the costs and the benefits of where I am at.
Yeah, 100%. The other thing is that I've worked for large companies and small companies, and it's not just the stable job, but the larger companies have almost always had better benefits. Like the health plan's better. They offer you more days off. They have kind of a, how do I put it? They had career tracks at the one company I'm thinking of, which was EMC Corporation. I'll just drop the name. They acquired a company I was working for. And so it was like, yeah, you can go the technical programmer type route, or you can go the management route. And they had tracks, right? It was like, you do these kinds of things for a while, and then we'll promote you so that you can do these other kinds of things for a while, and then we'll promote you to, and they had tiers. And so it was really clear, like, where you could wind up and how you could get there. But yeah, they tend to have a lot more systems for that kind of thing, even if you're still inventing some of the technology.
Yeah, it sounds like someone there read too many of the Choose Your Own Adventure books. Oh no, that's the 80s and 90s of me showing.
But yeah. So yeah, there are definite trade-offs. But again, and this is something that I harp on DevRev, is essentially, you've got to figure out where you want to go. Where do you want to be? What makes you happy? What lights you up? What kind of fuels your day? And gets you really excited to go and do whatever it is you're going to do. And then go be there. And so if your current job is giving you that, then do it. And if it's not, then figure out where you need to be in order to get that. So I am curious then, you mentioned that the company you work at is still using mainframes. Are they having trouble finding mainframe developers? Is that a thing at this point?
Yeah, I think so. If to find someone, when I first got hired out of school, they had like a 3-month course where they taught us. I didn't have any mainframe experience. I had one semester of COBOL that was PC based. And I think I didn't know that at the time. That's probably what got me into my job is, so they took us like 3 months to kind of teach us how to use the mainframe. And the mainframe is just so, I mean, it was built in an era where computer resources were more expensive than, programmer time. So, you got to worry about so many details about, how big your file is and how big your array is and all these kind of details that, so when I hear like, this focus on, Java's slow and not resource intensive, like I'm so on the other side of seeing how you can care so much about those nitty gritties that you don't see how much that time costs you into, writing productive code, that I'm kind of like, screw it. Just let's do Ruby, something that you can enjoy and you can actually read and understand, a year after you've written it. But yeah, I'd say that it's been a struggle to replace, we've got 2 openings right now that were, been open for over 6 months that we're still kind of searching to candidates to hire, especially in the United States that, I'd say all the candidates are 40, 50 plus that we're probably going to hire that are going to have the mainframe experience.
So what happens to the mainframes when there's an actual hardware problem? Because I remember, 10 years ago, taking a pair of AS400 servers out to the trash and trying to lift the 100-pound machines over my head into the trash bin. So, I mean, as the developers get older and, they kind of retire, die off, I mean, so do these servers.
Yeah, I think that's why IBM still makes lots of money, because you got to have these huge contracts with them that there's problems, they're going to be there within so many hours to replace, whatever goes wrong on it. And I think that's another reason they're looking to migrate of it, because it's so expensive to maintain versus just a Unix box that you can, it could be, anyone, your hardware vendor running it, where you're not locked down to just one vendor.
Yeah, and I think as companies get further down the road, if they're paying attention, they're going to see that, yeah, it's becoming more and more cost prohibitive to keep these old systems in place. But it's also getting more expensive to replace them too, because you have to have people who understand those systems. So it's an interesting dynamic there, to be sure. And to some degree, you could use Ruby or Node or something else to replace some of that. But at the end of the day, you're kind of stuck where you live. So, because like you're saying, I mean, it's a 10-year project to replace the mainframe.
Yeah.
So it's just going to get harder and harder. Was there anything else that we should talk about as far as this goes, with Ruby and the enterprise and kind of sneaking Ruby in behind the scenes to get stuff done? I will take the quiet as no, there's nothing else we should discuss. Nathan, if people want to see what you're working on these days, I'm assuming you're on GitHub and Twitter. Maybe you have a blog or things like that. Where do they find your stuff?
Yeah, they can check out my website, nathan.ruehs, ruehs.net, and get links to all my stuff on that page.
Awesome. All right, well, let's go ahead and do some picks. Dave, do you want to start us off with picks?
Yeah, sure. So my first pick is safety glasses. I was down in my wood shop the other day and I was carving out some things and had a drill bit snag, and pieces went flying and stuff. So safety glasses are important if you are working on projects. That's really my only one. It was kind of a wake-up call for me this past weekend. So luckily I had safety glasses over my glasses and stuff, but could have wound it up really bad.
Shoot your eye out, kid.
I hope
Christmas.
this comes out on Christmas. No, so I'll have another pick. It's a Christmas classic that I try to convince my wife that this is totally a Christmas movie, and it's Die Hard. So Die Hard has to be on everyone's watch list this Christmas season.
Do I dare admit that I've never seen it?
Seriously?
Seriously?
Oh my gosh. It's a Christmas classic. I don't know. Like, rent it, buy it. Got to do it.
Well, I'll see if I can figure out where I can stream it. But yeah, my life will be fulfilled after I see it. Right?
And then you'll watch Die Hard 2 and 3, and then the attempt at Die Hard 4.
The attempt at. Is that like the Star Wars prequels? It was an attempt at.
Yeah.
Star Wars movie.
It's just not the same as the originals. One horrible, but not the greatest.
Yeah. They did a lot better with the newer ones, but they're still major inconsistencies once you start thinking about it. Anyway, I will not rant on that. I will not rant on that. I am repenting my rant on side. Anyway, any other picks, Dave?
Nope, I'm out of picks.
All right. I'm going to jump in with a couple of picks. So I decided to go insane, and I'm going to be running a marathon next year.
Nice.
So I'm going to sign up for the St. George Marathon. That's in St. George, Utah. If you don't know where it is, it's about, an hour and a half, 2 hours from Las Vegas. It's actually closer to Las Vegas than Salt Lake City. Anyway, it's got kind of a nostalgic thing for me. I remember my dad training for the St. George Marathon when I was a kid. And, we lost him this year. So anyway, it's kind of a weird, I've always wanted to run a marathon and a way to connect with my dad and a bunch of other things. So anyway, I'm looking forward to that. That is in October. It's the first weekend in October. It's on a Saturday. It's a beautiful area down there. St. George isn't that far from Zion National Park. So just to give you an idea of what we're looking at there. But I also decided, when I decided that I was going to run the marathon, is that I really suck at sticking with running programs. So I'll run until I get basically either bored with it or I'm not quite sure what to do next. And so I'll quit doing it. And the other thing is it's nice having some kind of accountability. And so my friend John Sonmez talked me into hiring a running coach. And so if you go to McCurdy, that's MCKIRDY trained.com. I hired them. They're $100 and something a month to give me workouts every day. So I'm doing what they told me. So yesterday, it was funny. I got on the treadmill because I won't run outside as cold as it is. Once it starts to warm up again in like February, March, I'll probably start running outside again. So I was on the treadmill and I did, I think like 2.7 miles or something in a half hour. And this morning I was taking something downstairs for my wife and my quads were burning all the way down the stairs. And I was like, oh yeah, that's how this feels, this working out thing. But anyway, really digging that. So I hired a trainer and I'm really liking getting coaching these days on things that I want to do. For some of the other stuff like social media and things, I've been going to Clarity. That's clarity.fm. So that's my third pick. So if you're looking for coaching on like skills, then do that. And if you're looking for coaching on like running, yeah, you can go check out McCurdy. It was funny because I submitted the form to get coaching and I got a call back from the guy, the CEO. And he's like, yeah, just wanted to talk to you for a minute before I assigned your coach. So it was terrific. They've been really, really good. And I'll probably pick some of my running gear next time. So Nathan, do you have some picks for us?
Sure, I got two picks. First is real maple syrup. If you haven't had the real stuff, you got to try it. It's way better than the fake corn syrup that you have. My cousin has a small syrup farm up north, so I go up in spring and help him make it. So definitely check that out. And then the next pick is Ubiquiti, their network equipment. They make a lot of Wi-Fi and wireless, like enterprise grade equipment. And I was looking for setting up a Wi-Fi network at my church, and it was just really hard to find what you could buy enterprise equipment directly from anyone. It seemed like you always had to request a quote or, pay a service contract every year. And Ubiquiti prices were great. You can just buy them off Newegg or Amazon. And the software they have that goes with it is pretty intuitive. It's pretty nice to set up. So if you're ever looking for a small business or even for your home, they're pretty nice stuff.
Nice. All right, Nathan. Well, thank you for coming and talking to us. This has been really interesting just to kind of dive into maybe an angle that people don't think a lot about.
Yeah, it's definitely, I'm hoping to kind of spread the joy of Ruby to people that are kind of locked into the corporate world and kind of see how they can do that. So hopefully this podcast kind of maybe gives some people some ideas so they can share with maybe their fellow programmers that haven't seen the light yet.
Yeah, well, and that's what these shows are really about for me anyway, is just that freedom, right? So, is this going to make it better for you? Is it going to make life more enjoyable, work more enjoyable? Are you going to have, better work relationships with your coworkers? Going to be able to get more done? I mean, all of that plays into this idea of freedom. So, yeah. All right, well, let's go ahead and wrap up, and we will catch everybody next week.
All right. Talk to you later.
Adios.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.